today we are in the kitchen and we are going to make one of my favorite soups. It is Mexican chicken soup. It is tasty, it is full of vegetables, and it does have cheese in it. It's just one of my favorites, and that is what we are making today. Oh, and by the way, it's super easy. So for this soup, we don't need a whole lot. It's a lot of canned goods. You're going to need canned corn, mixed vegetables. You're going to need a vegetable soup that does not have noodles in it. They're getting harder to find, but you can buy a vegetable soup that doesn't have noodles. You're going to need brown rice or white rice, chicken breast, and a cream of potato soup. And then you're going to need Velveeta. You are going to need a total of 1 pound of Velveeta. The original recipe actually calls for half a pound of the Mexican Velveeta and a half pound of the regular. I just buy all regular and then I just throw salsa in with it, and that works perfectly fine. And that's all you're going to need for this recipe. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your chicken and you are going to cook it in a pan of water. I have a pan of water here. I'm going to go ahead and get that turned on. And I'm just going to go ahead and cook my chicken until it is nice and done. I'll bring you back when it's done. So while the chicken is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and we are going to cut up our cheese. Now this is a 2-pound block of cheese, so I'm only going to be using half of it. As a side note, Velveeta does freeze, so I can actually freeze this for a future meal. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this in half. I'm going to use half of it now, and I will put the other half in the freezer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be putting this in a soup. So I'm going to simply go ahead and cut this and chop it down a little bit because it'll melt easier if it's in smaller pieces. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a couple little slices. This is not necessary. The soup will be cooking for a while, so it would melt on its own. I just like to give it a little bit of boost. My dog Zoe is hanging out underneath my tripod, hoping that I drop something. So that's why it's wobbly. So that will be ready once my chicken is cooked. I will also go ahead and get everything else opened, ready to go. So I've gone ahead and cut up my chicken breast. It is in the water in my pan, and you do want to leave that water in there. So now what you're going to do is you're going to leave that little bit of water in there with your cooked chicken, and you're going to just start adding your ingredients. So I'm going to add my mixed vegetables. And if you notice, I am not draining my cans. That is very important. You want to leave all of your liquid in there. And you're just going to add everything, the corn, the soup, right down the line. Just add it right on in. It's going to look like a hot mess at first, but hot mess is okay. Let's add the cream of potato in there. And I had a friend that I gave this recipe to years ago. And actually before I go on with my story, I'm going to say that we're adding a half cup of the rice. So I had a friend that I gave the recipe to years ago. And she made it, and she called me, and she's like, okay, something didn't work. It's like this sticky mess. And it's because she was so accustomed to throwing out the liquid in her vegetables that she threw all the liquid away. So the only liquid she had was a little bit out of her soup can. So I always like to say, keep the liquid. So once everything's in, you can see that it is just there. The cheese is in there. Everything is there. We're going to go ahead and just give that a stir. And then what we're going to do is we are going to lower the heat, and we are just going to simmer that for the next hour. Now, because it is a cheese-based soup, you are going to want to stir it relatively frequently. But that is it. Stir it until it's done. So we're about 20 minutes in. You can see that the cheese is starting to melt and the soup is looking a lot more cheesy. It's starting to smell delicious. Make sure when you're stirring it that you are not just stirring the top, that you are actually going across the bottom, because it will stick because it is cheese. And this is so delicious looking. I usually eat it with tortilla chips, but that's just me. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the soup. If you try it, put it in the comments below and let me know what you think. No excuses.